I'm not sure where I was or where it was when I first heard this saying, but I knew what it meant right away. There's only 10 spots in the top 10. Driving back from Yakima last weekend right after playing an acoustic gig at a winery with Andy and John. And it was one of those gigs where, everything went right. We sounded better than ever. The crowd loved us, and we left feeling pretty excited for the next gig. On the way home, I ran into this sunset, and I thought about Mimi and the girls, and how much they would have dug the sunset. Now, they're not fans of sitting around all day and watching me play music, and that's when reality sets in. I'm sacrificing a bit of my soul for this music thing.
It's such a feeling that my love I can hide. got that something, I think you understand. When I say that something, I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
My parents were married in 1956. A year later, my brother Larry was born. A year after that, in 1958, Debbie, my older sister, was born. 5 years later, I was born. 1963, November 11th, Veterans Day. 2 weeks later, JFK was killed. 2 months after that, the Beatles landed in America. I could imagine that the Ed Sullivan Show was being blasted in our house that night too. And that music jumped into my 2-month-old subconscious and steered the plane that became the rest of my life. Yeah, 1967, Summer Love, my younger sister Sandy was born. So there were 4 of us growing up. There was always music being played in the house, you know. We had one of those TV record player combination consoles, big giant piece of furniture, you know. One big speaker, black and white TV, you know, and my dad had lots of country records. He was a country music fan. Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, Buck Owens, Lefty Frizzell. He was a heavy Hank Williams fan, you know. And he had a Hank Williams Luke the Drifter, you know, where Hank Williams doing all his Christian tunes, gospel songs, you know. I Saw the Light and all that. Marty Robbins. We had Gunfighter Ballads. God, I used to stare at that cover for hours. I was standing there real tough holding that gun like a gunfighter, you know. Love that record. But at an early age, and I don't remember how old, but I was young, he let me put Luke the Drifter on the turntable on a big console by myself. You know, throw the needle on there. You know, and I was hooked. You know, at that point all I wanted to do was listen to records.
Life filled with sin, I wouldn't let my dear Savior in. Then Jesus came like a stranger in the night. Praise the Lord, I saw the light.
My older brother Larry had Beatle records, you know, Creedence Clearwater, you know, stuff like that. Rolling Stones. I remember we had Out of Our Heads. You know, Mercy, Mercy, God, I loved all that stuff as a little kid, Satisfaction.
I saw the light.
They just don't know how.
Yeah, we had lots of music, and my dad played guitar and Larry played guitar. Dad had an old Sears Harmony Monterey. That guy right there, matter of fact. The same guitar that Tom Fogerty played on, or picture of Tom Fogerty on Willie and the Poor Boys. That had the same guitar. Larry had a Fender Mustang, and they used to kind of play. Dan had a lot of songbooks, Hank Williams songbooks, and I always wanted to play guitar with them. You know, I didn't know I was a kid. I was tiny. You know, I wanted to play guitar. I didn't know how to play air guitar. You know. And I don't know how old I was, but I finally got a guitar. It's a toy guitar, but it looked like it was a pretty cool toy guitar. It wasn't too plasticky. You know. I don't know how many years I had that, but I know I played it to death, and I don't know what happened to it.
Sugar, sugar!
Sugar, oh honey, honey, you are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you. Everybody shout, come on now, sing out, it's time for the ghoulies get together.
TV in the late 60s, early 70s. There's a lot of cool shows with pop tunes, you know, Goody Ghoulies, Banana Splits. I loved all that stuff, you know. And the Monkees. Loved the Monkees.
Here we come, walking down the street. We get funniest looks from everyone we meet.
My cousin Rick, he's a few years older than me. But over the years he's a musician, guitar player. We played together quite a bit over the years. Really close. But he'll tell you the story too. He likes to tell the story. They came to visit my grandparents in the late 60s, and I was, all of 4 or 5 years old. But I was running around the house singing "I'm a Believer" by the Monkees. And Rick was just learning to play guitar. He wasn't really into rock and roll. But he remembered me singing that song, so he got home. They were visiting from Sacramento. We were in LA. He got home and he heard "I'm a Believer" on the radio, and he'll tell you to this day that was his start, his obsession with rock and roll, with me as a little kid teaching him "I'm a Believer" by the Monkees.
I'm a believer, I couldn't leave her if I tried. Can you judge a man by the way he wears his hair?
used to hate getting a haircut growing up. Dad used to take us pretty regular to the local barbershop, Ray's barbershop, probably about once a month growing up, to get our haircut, a regular boy's haircut. That's what it was called, which meant really short. And I used to really want long hair, you know. I was looking at those album covers of the Beatles and the Stones, the Byrds, and all these bands that had all these guys had long hair, and it just was cool to me. I wanted to be cool. I wanted long hair. You know, if my hair touched my ears, I thought I had long hair. And as soon as it touched my ears, I went down to the barbershop and got it cut off. But one summer, Dad wanted to give me a butch. And, you shave your head kind of like Elvis going to the army style. Pretty much bald. And I was mortified, you know. And so I fought him on it, and he finally came to me and he said, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. If you let me shave your head, you let me cut it off, I'll take it down to the dime store and I'll buy you 2 45s. Now, I was listening to a lot of records in the house, but none of them were mine. They were my dad's or Larry's or whatever was later on the house, but they weren't mine. And so the opportunity to have my own records. So I agreed, shaved my head, and right afterwards we went straight to the dime store, which was a local little novelty store of some sort in the neighborhood, but it had a big record bin of all the 45s of the day. And so I went down there and I picked out Dragging the Line by Tommy James and the Shondells, and I picked out one for Larry because Larry wanted the new Creedence Clearwater single, Sweet Hitchhiker. And he said, if you pick out that one, I'll give you one of mine. Well, at the time I was listening a lot to his Beach Boys Do It Again 45. And so I cut off my hair for Tommy James and the Shondells and the Beach Boys.
It's automatic when I talk with old friends. The conversation turns to girls we knew when their hair was soft and long, and the beach was the place to go.
I was 12 years old when I started to learn how to play guitar. I had a music teacher in 7th grade who taught guitar to the class. She showed us a few chords, the D chord, the A chord, simple things to get me going. That was it. I took it from there. I never had another lesson. I just needed someone to get me started.
A girl, or should I say, she once had me.
I learned how to play on Dad's Harmony acoustic archtop, and after a year or so, bought my first guitar. Larry had a Yamaha FG 180 that I bought off of him for $50. I had the best $50 I ever spent. I still have it, and I still play it a lot. In fact, just about every tune I've ever written has been written on that guitar. And once I started playing, that was it. That's all I wanted to do. Everything about me changed. I used to play baseball, Little League, I used to play football, ride skateboards, all that stuff, and I just stopped. All I wanted to do was play guitar. I stopped hanging with the neighbor kids. I found new friends that were into music. If Mom and Dad knew anything about me, it was that I was going to play guitar. So for my 15th birthday, they gave Larry $600 and told him to go buy me a good guitar. So he came home and he surprised me with a 1974 Telecaster Deluxe. I still have it, and I still use it all the time. I have lots of guitars now, but I still use that one the most.
This bird had flown, so I lit the fire. Isn't it good, Norwegian wood?
Baby's good to me, you know she's happy as can be, you know she said so. I'm in love with her and I feel fine.
It's hard to put into words the impact and the influence that the Beatles had on me throughout my life. More than just the songs themselves and the obvious things about them, you know, the great songwriting and the great vocals and everything else about them. It was the guitar riffs. All these songs were driven by these great guitar riffs. Day Tripper, Ticket to Ride, Something, Paperback Writer, She Said, And Your Bird Can Sing. All these songs had great guitar riffs. And one that really sticks out for me, and I remember really loving as a kid early on, was I Feel Fine. It was those riffs that made me really want to learn to play guitar.
You know, he buys her diamond rings, you know she said so. She's in love with me and I feel fine. She's in love with me and I feel fine.
My first gig was at the local Mormon church with some friends from high school. And we couldn't have been very good, you know. I think we only practiced 3 or 4 times. It was just the idea of going out and playing in front of people that was exciting. But we did it, and I think we played 6 or 7 songs. But the funny part was that we played Homegrown by Neil Young. You know, Homegrown, or, you know, it's a marijuana anthem. And we thought we were getting away with something, you know, and we kind of did. One of the church leaders came to us afterwards and he said, "Man, I really love that song, Home Cooking." So that was the inside joke. We played the church and played a marijuana anthem. You know, even then, the very first gig, was getting into the whole rock and roll rebellion thing.
Homegrown is a good thing. Plant that bell and let it ring.
Come on, man. Do it.
Real band I found myself in was with a senior in high school with a friend from school, Glenn, the drummer friend. And he knew a guy who played blues harmonica named Mike Mata. And Mike had been jamming with a keyboard player named Dave Aparicio. And so we set up a get together, you know. And we hit it off. We really had a good time. And so we got together all the time and just jammed. But we didn't have a bass player or a singer. It was just Glenn on drums, me on guitar, and Dave playing keyboards. And Dave had an Electric Rhodes piano that he played bass on, kind of like Ray Manzarek from the Doors. And we used to record our little get-togethers, listen back to it and fix things that needed fixing, whatever. And at some point, we just asked Mike, who every now and then he'd blow his harmonica, but most of the times he just kind of sat in the corner and hung out with us, you know. So we just asked him one time to get up and sing, so we can, know where we are in the song, and kind of like a guide. But after we recorded and listened back, we were all kind of floored, man, because this guy sounded just like Jim Morrison. Playing a bunch of Doors songs anyway. So the first, next thing you know, kind of found ourselves in this Doors tribute band. And we played a lot of gigs. We played a lot of parties. Backyard parties were a big thing in the day. And we built a little reputation playing a bunch of Doors tunes with this cat that sounded like Jim Morrison. One of the things I learned with those guys was just kind of how to be in a band, the whole camaraderie thing, the gang mentality. I loved those guys. We had a great time together, and I learned a lot about playing in a band, with those guys.
We want the world and we want it, the world and we want it.
Yeah, for high school graduation, my parents gave me some money to go in and to go into the recording studio and record some songs that I'd written. Once I started playing guitar, I've been trying to write songs, and I had a few by then that I wanted to record, but I didn't know anything about recording. had a local music store, Mel's Sound of Music, in the neighborhood. And in the back of the store, they had an 8-track recording studio. So we worked out a deal that I would come in and record a bunch of, a few of my songs. And so I asked Glenn to play drums, and another friend, Mike, play acoustic guitar, and I'd do the rest. I would play the electric guitar, sing my songs, and play the bass. And mind you, I'd never done any of those things before. I wasn't a bass player, but I figured out, what I had to do to get by on my tunes. I just wanted to record. I just wanted to learn how to do it. And it was an eye-opener, I went in there pretty naive. I had no idea how any of that stuff worked,
should I go through? Did I say something wrong, or is it just your way? I'm not gonna change. I'm not gonna change, yeah. I've been down this road one too many times. Held my hand out but couldn't get it right. This lonesome house tried to be gone before the rain.
I learned a lot in those first recording sessions. I learned about overdubbing, mixing, where to place a microphone, how to mic things. There was something so satisfying about hearing a tune that was finished, listening back to it. A sound that was only in your head until then. And after that, all I wanted to do was write and record.
And I hope that I'll be gone before the rain.
My dad gave me the garage to set up for a rehearsal room, pretty much put all the stuff aside, cleared it out, and gave it to me. They were real supportive that way. I think mostly they just wanted to keep me around the house so they keep an eye on us, know what I'm up to. By now, I was ready to put together my own band and start doing my songs, you know. And I had been playing with Glenn, my friend Glenn from high school. He was a really good drummer, and we talked a lot about, you know, becoming stars and becoming rock stars, putting a band together. But at that particular time, he just wasn't that committed, and he was, you know, preoccupied, and I was on fire, you know. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to screw around. I had a vision for what I wanted to do. So I had to let Glenn go, you know, and I met Roy McDonald. He's a couple years younger than me. And I've been playing with a guy named Pete on bass. So the three of us formed The Things. Contrary to what the Things ended up being, we started off as kind of a punk band. You know, I'd been listening to and digging things like the Ramones, Elvis Costello, the Plimsolls, you know, things like that. And that's kind of what we were going for. You know, it was the three of us. We were power pop.
I really do. Do I have to repeat myself to get through to you? Do I have to tell you one more time how much I love you? You are the one. You are the one. You are the one.
But yeah, once the Things got going, yeah, we'd learn a few of my songs. We'd go back into the same studio, Mel's recording studio, record a few songs, go out and play a couple parties, learn a few more songs, come back in a month or so later, record a few more songs. After about a year or so, we had quite a few. I called them demos, you know. They were good little recordings, but we had no producer. It was just us going in the studio with this engineer and recording our songs real quick.
I'll be waiting here all my
But at one point, Pete and I had gone down to the Roxy to see the Plimsolls. But it was the opening band that blew me away. It was an LA band called Salvation Army. They later became the 3 O'Clock. But they were dressed in this 1960s Paisley, fresh out of 1967 is what they looked like, and they were playing that kind of music. I think they even covered "For Pete's Sake" by the Monkees. They were just doing everything that I wanted to do. They were a 4-piece band, and so we left, and I was so excited about them that I found out where they were playing next, and so we went to one of their shows that they were opening. It was, or not opening, but they were headlining. It was their gig. Somewhere in Orange County. Pete and I went, and I walked into this place, and it was like walking back in time, man. It was pretty, it's a big deal for me at the time. We got into this place, and everybody was dressed the same. It was like walking back into a time warp, like 1967, 68. There were all these mods, and girls wearing beads and fringe, fringe clothing, colorful clothing, Paisleys, and I was blown away. And this band was doing everything I wanted to do. So I immediately went home that night and started writing Colored Heaven. And the songwriting changed because these guys were doing it, we could do it. That's how I felt.
Got your radios on? It's time for Rodney on the Rock.
My younger sister Sandy came to us and told us that her and her friends had gone down to the local radio station, ROQ in LA. They were a popular station at the time, played a lot of new wave, a lot of the newer music, and we'd been listening to them. Her and her friends would go down and knocked on the back door during Rodney Bingenheimer's show. Rodney Bingenheimer was, Rodney on the Rock, the mayor of Sunset Strip, what he was dubbed. He was a local DJ, popular DJ, well known, in LA, for breaking a lot of the newer bands. He just had this reputation. Everybody wanted to be on Rodney's show. And on Saturday nights, he had a show from 8 to 12, and he played a lot of the local music. You know, he was playing bands like the Bloom Souls and 3 O'Clock, who we just seen. And she said they had gone down there, knocked on the door, and Rodney answered the door. And she talked to him for a little while. So she came back to us and says, hey man, you need to go down there, bring your tape, and just see what happens. You know? And so we did. Rodney didn't answer, somebody else answered the door, but we had more tape, a little note saying that we had this gig, Adam Wong's. And we drove off, and that was it. Well, you know, we were 10 minutes in our car on the way home, and the song Eyes of a Child, one of our tunes on that tape, comes on the radio. And you know, just like you've heard other people tell this has happened to, we heard ourselves on the radio, we pulled over to the side of the road real quick, listened to it, and afterwards just jumped up and down, screamed, and thought, yeah, we made it. We got played on the radio. It was thrilling, man. It was pretty exciting. But on the way home, towards the end of his show, he played another tune. And he played a song called It Seems to Be Raining, which it kind of irritated the other guys because I had bought a 4-track cassette recorder. And I used it to record my tunes, you know, record demos for the band to show them how to play the tunes. And I just kind of threw a song that I had recorded for them that they hadn't played on. Just for fun, and sure enough, Rodney played that one, and it never set well with those guys because that was the song he played the most. I always wanted to redo it, but it ended up on the album too, and it's the one song those guys didn't play on. So we played this show at Madame Wong's. This is our first Hollywood club gig. It's like a Wednesday night. I think 4 bands. We were the last. And by the time we went on, it was pretty late, 11:30 or something like that, and there was really nobody left in the place. It was pretty empty. But we played our songs. You know, and I thought we did okay. We were excited to be there anyway, play on the same stage that a lot of people had played on. But this girl, Lori, afterwards comes up to us and says, Greg Shaw from Bonk Records wants to sign you guys. He heard your tape on Rodney's show and he's really interested. He sent me down here and here's his number and get in contact with him. You know. And so we did. You know, we were like, what? You know, he wants to sign us? Okay. And so we did. We called him up. We went down and met him at his warehouse office in LA. And he offered us a recording contract. Now, we were young. We were impressionable. You know, I read the thing. I read the contract. And I'll be honest, I read it while, thinking I was going to be a star. I didn't really pay attention to it. I just got to the end and said, yeah, where do I sign? We didn't show it to any music lawyers. We didn't seek anybody's advice. We just got excited and said, yeah, we're ready to go. He seemed sincere. He's a really nice guy. I liked him. He was an independent record guy, and he was really only signing bands that he liked. And so he seemed to be in it for the right reasons. He loved music. So we did. We signed a recording contract with him. A 2-record deal. We were going to release we weren't gonna go in and record a new album. We were just going to use the existing demo tapes that we had recorded, and then later on go in the studio and record the second record.
She came out of the sky, walked into my mind, never knowing why. She came out of the sky. I saw your eyes, the eyes of a child, I saw your eyes. If you change your mind, I might change mine, but I know I'm not gonna play this game. But if you go, then you should know it's never gonna be the same. Do you take me for such a fool? You turn around and broke my heart. And now what can I do? Where do I start? Why am I waiting for her? I just don't know. I must be a fool, 'cause I know she will not show. The girl who wants to run away discovers that she's had a day. It's no good just thinking you are still mad. Colors I see inside her eyes. I don't know why you wanna leave me alone. I told you before, it's over. All of the time, all of the time, all of the time. Man, Misty, you're a better man than I. Yeah, Misty, you're a better man than I. Oh, Misty, you're a better man than I. Yeah, Misty, you're a better man than I.
Roy and I have been wanting to replace Pete for a while. We just wanted a better bass player. He was a nice guy. But now that we had a record contract, it was time to get serious. Build a better band.
Dreaming in the forest.
And So Roy had known Bob Weir through the group of friends that he ran around with. And Bob had been playing in a band with this guy Larry Klein for several years. And so he brought Larry along on guitar. And that was it, I had this vision. 4-piece band, 2 guitars, bass and drum. It was a cross between Neil Young's Crazy Horse and the Beatles. And these guys were it, that lineup, those 4 guys, that was the things for me. Those 4.
I'm looking for cause, I'm looking for
And so with Colored Heaven being released, Vox Records started booking gigs for us. We were starting to get a lot of gigs and a lot of shows in Hollywood. They sent us to Portland to play, a couple shows up there, San Francisco. We started playing, Santa Barbara, started playing all these gigs. And we were getting a pretty good reputation for being a good live band. Roy especially. Roy was becoming pretty well known for his drumming. He was a pretty good drummer, and he was a lot of fun to watch. He's being kind of dubbed the new Keith Moon. So we were getting a pretty good reputation for being a really good live band, and I think that was our strong point was our live shows.
That's right. They're on Vox Records. I've been playing them a lot on my show for a long time. And they're about to entertain you tonight. Let's get everybody up front, everybody in back, come close. Let's get a real dance freak out going here. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a hand for The Thing?
there was a scene happening in LA at the time, and it was dubbed the Paisley Underground. You know, there's bands like the 3 O'Clock and the Long Riders, the Bangles, bands like that, and they were drawing big crowds. You know, people were getting into it, and we kind of, you know, we try to associate ourselves with that. And there was a through Vox Records with all the Vox bands, there were a lot of bands doing that kind of music, you know, being dubbed garage rock, whatever it was. And so we were playing a lot of these gigs with other bands on the label, you know, the Pandoras, the Telltale Hearts, Gravedigger 5. There were all these garage rock bands, you know, wearing Paisley shirts and kind of into this whole retro 60s thing, and we found ourselves grouped in that scene, and we didn't mind, you know, we just happened to belong. It was a blast, really, you know, being part of something. We were these kids from the valley, you know, now we were kind of plunged into the city a little bit and playing in the city, and people were coming to see us play. It was thrilling, exciting. After a little while, it was time to go in and record the second album. And by now, you know, I've been writing a lot of songs, thinking about, you know, record production and being able to do things in the studio. And Greg Shaw had hooked us up with Brett Gurewitz, who famous for, you know, became famous later on, or well known for starting up Epitaph Records, one of the largest independent labels around. But at the time, he was just putting together, he was just building his first recording studio. He came from that band Bad Religion, and he was building a recording studio. And so Greg had worked it out for us to be the first band, really, to record with him. This idea. I really wanted to make sure that this 6th record is going to be heard by people and notice, and so I came up with this idea to ask to have each song produced by somebody different. Find somebody in a popular band and ask them to produce one of the tunes. You know, so we had asked Michael Corsio from 3 O'Clock. I know Sid Griffin from the Long Riders was interested. He actually came down and hung out with us one night. But that was the original idea for the second album, was to invite different people to produce a song, you know. And so, you know, you you get everybody's name on the album, and you get their fans wanting to know what they were doing. So more exposure to the record. That was the original thought. It became kind of chaotic once we started trying to do that. At some point, in the midst of all that, a friend of ours hooked us up with Rick Parnell. Rick Parnell made a name for himself. He's the guy that played drums on Tony Bassel's hit in the 80s, Mickey. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine, you're so fine. You blow my mind, hey Mickey. He's a drummer on that too. But the more interesting thing that he did was he was the drummer in Spinal Tap. Mick Shrimpton.
Given the history of Spinal Tap drummers in the past, do you have any fears for your life?
When I did join, they did tell me, they kind of took me aside and said, well, Mick, it's like this. And it did kind of freak me out a bit, but it can't always happen.
Right.
To everybody, can it?
Right.
I mean,
the law of averages
says,
says you will survive.
Yeah.
And he wanted to produce a couple songs, but once we hooked up with him and played him he was interested in doing the whole record, and he was going to do it for cheap. And he was good. He knew the studio, and we liked him, so we just decided in the end to have him produce it. And so we spent a few months recording Outside My Window album.
Falling eyes and dragging your hands across the floor. If it's over, then I don't care. But let me know, 'cause it's only fair. Look now. I've been nowhere and I've been everywhere. I'm almost there. Na 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 na.
Colored Heaven was doing really well on the college market. And Greg Shaw had distribution deals over in Europe, so the record was selling in England, France, and surprisingly, it sold the best in Greece, you know. And so while we were recording the Outside My Window record, we were making big plans. You know, we were getting ready to book a tour, you know, book some bigger gigs, have a record release party, make a big deal when this record came out, and all was going great. Momentum while we were making this record, you know. More and more people were coming out to see us play. The band was better than ever, you know, at the top of our game. I had been writing a ton of songs. I had enough songs for the next record, and then some. We were just rolling right along. The future was wide open, as the song goes. And all that came to a screeching halt.
Turned your back and went away. Didn't believe in what we had to say. In time, could feel you just gone astray.
Right as we were finishing up mixing the Outside My Window record, the second record, Roy came to me and said he was leaving the band. He had been sitting in with a band called the Red Cross, and they were a local LA band, pretty popular band. They'd been around for a while, and they were kind of making their comeback, and their drummer, they had lost their drummer, so Roy had been filling in at some of these gigs they had, and they had some pretty big shows. They were playing places, just bigger places than we had played. I think at one point they even played at the Hollywood Bowl, something like that. Well, they had asked Roy to join the band, and they were just about ready to sign with Warner Brothers, and so they were farther ahead down the road than we were on the success. The road to success. They were farther down, and they dangled the carrot in front of him, and he took it. But for us, it was devastating. For me especially, because Roy and I were friends. We had built this thing together, and I felt he didn't just quit the band; he quit me, quit my tunes, quit my songs. So I took it kind of personal. Looking back in hindsight, everybody's got to do what they got to do. He's had some success with his career, so we just didn't have time to get pissed off. We had a record coming out, and we had to do something quick. We had shows lined up. We were kind of in a bind. drums, Rick Sortwell. He came in and he I think one tryout, one audition, and that was it. We hired him. He learned the tunes, and we kind of patched ourselves up and got back out there and started doing it. For me, the band was never the same once Roy left. Imagine, Ringo quitting the Beatles. Anybody could have played, but it's Ringo. It wouldn't have been the same. Certain bands, for me, for that band anyway, none of us could be replaced and didn't have it be the same. And it wasn't. We hobbled along.
Thinking all the time, there's too much on my mind. Seems there's more to life than just to live it. It's too much on my mind, and there is nothing I can say. It's too much on my mind, and there is nothing I can do. Just weigh me down, drag me to the ground, shake my head till there's no more life in me. Ruin in my brain, I'll never be the same. My poor demented mind is slowly going.
To Rick's credit, he was a fan of the band, and so he knew all the songs, and so it didn't take us long to kind of get back on our feet, but it really was never the same. The whole dynamic of the band had changed. And we had also been having some issues with the record company by now too. The first album, Colored Heaven. Oh, for one, we had an album cover all designed and ready to go. Really nice picture of the band. Greg had taken it to his art department and came back, with this real amateurish, they looked like the guy just used colored pencils and crayons. It was just cheesy. And I hated it, and I asked him about it. I said, no, you can't. Not only that, you couldn't really read the name of the band or the name of the album. So if you're going through the record bin, you would, if you're looking for a record, you wouldn't find it, because you would look at it and you wouldn't know what it said. And it was just ugly. And so I asked him, can we change that? He said, oh, no, it's already printed, Okay, next one will be better. But also, when we recorded Colored Heaven in the 8-track studio, it sounded bitchin' coming out of those speakers, it just had a big sound. And when we mastered the record with Greg, it sounded good. When we got our box of records, before it was released, when it was finished pressing, took it home, all excited, put it on I hated the album cover, but got excited and put it on the record player, and it was jacked up, man. I mean, Out of Time, the song Out of Time had two, not just one, but two skips in it. And I thought, okay, that's one bad record. Got another one out, put it on, same thing. I went through 3 or 4 records, and they all had this skip in the same spot. And the first side towards the end, especially Colored Heaven, where it starts off with just one 12-string guitar kind of picking, the speed shifts, kind of, as if you got one of those warped records. And it just, and dynamically, it sounded tiny and no bottom end. And so I asked Greg about that. I said, hey man, we can't release this. It's got to be redone. Oh no, it's already done. We can't go back. No budget for it. And so already, the first record had an ugly album cover, and the quality of the record was just crap. This is what we're going to give people, But in experience, I just blew out the door. So the next record's going to be the one anyway. This is just, first record. I'm excited to go do this next record. While we were making Outside My Window, I started to educate myself a little bit about our record contract. And I got the first songwriting royalty statement back from BMI. And under the publishing, it said Cruisin' Music. The song's owned by Cruisin' Music. And I'm like, well, who's Cruisin' Music? Cruisin' Music was Greg Shaw and Fox Records. And when we had the conversation making the record, it was understood that these are my songs and publishing would be for us. That's what he told us. It's your publishing company. And we did. We started a publishing company. And we called it Green Tangerine Tunes. And the name of that is nowhere listed on this statement. So I approached him about that. I said, what's the deal, He said, well, it's in the contract. You read the contract. So, it's my fault. I should have paid attention. But I said, okay, but this next record, from here on out, I'm owning my tunes. If I know anything about the record business, especially with all the lawsuits you read about, I deserve to own my own tunes. I'm going to own my own tunes. They're mine. And he agreed. And so we set up a new publishing agreement, and we started moving forward. So I kind of put all that behind me and just stuck with the momentum of the band, with Outside My Window, moving right along. And we just, okay, let's get over that hurdle. And so, but we had the same issue with the album cover on Outside My Window. We actually designed a really nice, cool. The album's title, Outside My Window. We had the window frame of an album cover with a really clear picture of us and in nice, bold, easy to read letters, the things outside my window. Gave it to Greg, comes back, and it's completely different. And not only that, and the writing on it's even worse. You have no idea what it says. You know, so if you're going through the record bin and you see looking for things outside my window, you're not going to find it because it doesn't say it on the record. You just can't read it. You know, so I was already kind of having, some issues. And I just wasn't liking the response, sorry. It was too late. It was what we were getting back from. So that coupled with Roy leaving the band and us having, we were I was getting jaded pretty quick. I had also had a ton of tunes ready for a third record, but we couldn't record with Rick. The whole dynamic of the band had changed, and we needed to do something. Before Larry and Bob had joined the Things, they had been in a band called the Charming Colors. And all these guys were friends of Roy's, and that's how I kind of met up with these guys. And they had the drummer that played with them was a good friend of theirs, a guy named Mike Sosa. And Mike Sosa was in a punk band called Mad Parade. He was a very aggressive drummer, very hard hitter, really good drummer, really tight. And, since Bob and Larry, loved playing with him and they had their own kind of groove, we just brought them along and started talking about recording that third record.
And how she vanished from her sight, remembering what was said that
night. I had approached Greg Shaw about all the issues we'd had. And I just felt like he wasn't going to. I felt it was going to be more of the same. That as long as we stayed with Vox Records, we were always going to be small time. We weren't going to get out of the college radio market ever. And not only that, I wasn't feeling confident that he was behind us much anymore. In hindsight, I believe he meant well. I truly do. But it was frustrating for us. We wanted to make a career out of this, man. We wanted to make a living. This wasn't a hobby, So. Half-assing things just wasn't in the cards. I didn't want to do anything half-ass, and it didn't need to be half-assed. That was the thing that was irritating. It didn't need to be. It could have been dealt with better.
We were not supposed to lie. Never should have said goodbye. We were happy, safe and warm. Once before the storm.
Instead of waiting around for Greg Shaw to decide what he wanted to do, recording-wise, we just took it on ourselves, and we called up Brett Gurewitz, who by now had moved his studio to another location, and it had gotten bigger and better, and booked some recording sessions with him. While we were recording with him at his studio, he was putting together his own record company, and he had a lot of cool ideas, because I didn't want to do the next record with Vox. He wanted us. He wanted to sign us. He saw something in it, because he was there in the studio working with us. He saw what we were doing. And so I talked to Greg Shaw and said we're not re-signing. And that was it. But my sense is, from what I heard through the grapevine, it didn't go down well with him, and they were hurt, that we had left like that. In hindsight, it may have been better to stay with Greg. Who knows? But we were pretty comfortable with Brett, and Brett was. I like Brett, man. He was a very honest guy, man. Or appeared to be honest. That's how I felt. To this day, I have no reason to believe he wasn't upfront about a lot of things. But by now, the momentum was definitely starting to wane. Early on, it became apparent that even this new drummer, Mike Sosa, wasn't going to do it for me. Great drummer, and great drummer for his band Mad Parade, but it wasn't working for what I wanted to do, And so we recorded that record, but I have to say, I was kind of like on autopilot while we were recording, I just didn't care as much, and what I mean is if I got to the studio and I had a pair of dead strings on my guitar, fuck it, just go ahead and record it, if I wasn't completely happy with the solo but it was okay, leave it. It was a lot like that. And so if you listen to the songs, there's some really good songs on that record, and a couple that came out really well. But when I listen to it, I hear the laziness, from me especially. I hear enthusiasm with Mike on the drums, but I'm very lazy on that record, because my heart wasn't in it by then, And as much as I liked Mike Sosa, he was a character, man. He's one of those kind of guys that he's the life of the party. But he's the life of the party that just might attract the law. You know, there's always trouble brewing around him. Seemed like, you know, and at some point, him and Mike and Larry got into a row, and that was it. You know, the band just kind of fell apart. We finished recording the record, and the band just kind of fell apart. I didn't really talk to Brett for a long time after that. You know, we didn't stay in contact. I just kind of mentally walked away from it all. You know, it was one of those situations where it was like, we didn't say I quit or I'm done. It was just kind of one of those, see you later. You know, and everybody kind of lost track of time.
Turn on, tune in, turn on, tune in, and drop out. Turn on, tune in, turn on, tune in, and drop out. That's all we need to survive. What has been done? Tell me who jumped the gun.
Take a look at me. What can you see? Someone lost and in misery. I remember a time when life wasn't so hard. Everything shined and my poor little mind wasn't scarred. Everybody seems to have been